Static methods are methods that belong to the class and not to the object. Methods that belong to objects are sometimes referred to as instance methods. Similarly to how we access constants in the previous tutorial without having to instantiate the class, we access static methods without instantiating the class also. We'll use the class name followed by the scope resolution operator, or the double colon, followed by the static method name. Static methods are stored in a separate portion of the heap memory. Instance methods are stored in stack memory. Most of the times, a programmer will choose to create static methods and properties from an architectural perspective, such as when a person is trying to implement a singleton. Design patterns will not be discussed in this tutorial series. Static methods are created similarly to regular instance methods, with the exception that the static keyword is appended to the declaration. For example, public static function getStoreName, and static properties have the static keyword also appended to them, such as static, let's say, variable name. We'll look at a quick example to see how many times the object was instantiated. We don't want to store the number as a separate variable outside of the class, but can instead store it inside of the class as a static property. We'll create a method that retrieves the number and updates it at the same time. What I'm thinking we're going to do in this tutorial is check in to see how many times this German Shepherd class is going to get instantiated. So before we do, I'm just going to go ahead and create a new file called static keyword, and I'm going to go ahead and require once our German Shepherd.php class. I'll go ahead and instantiate it, which we'll just do new German Shepherd, and we'll say brown for eye color 10/10/2020, or I guess that's in the future, 2019, and then fur color brown, whatever. So here we go. We have one German Shepherd that's created, but now there's no way of us telling how many times this German Shepherd class has been created. I mean, we can visually see it, but if we just copy this down 20, 30 times, let's just put GSDoc 1, 2, 3, 4, especially if this is in some kind of a loop, we won't have any kind of idea how many times this German Shepherd class has been instantiated. So what can we do? Well, let's get into our German Shepherd class and let's create a static function. I guess before we do that, we could keep some kind of variable right here where every single time we instantiate it, we update the variable, but we don't want to do that. We want this automated and as simple as possible for us. So we'll go to our German Shepherd class, and what we want to do is actually create a static property. And since we're going to be following PHP 7 kind of conventions, we're going to say static integer is the type that we're going to be creating, and we're going to say number of dogs created. And we'll go ahead and initialize this to 0. Now, every single time you instantiate the object, like we've done over here, this initialization step only happens on the first instantiation. So this number of dogs created static property belongs to this class, and it doesn't belong to the object. So it gets stored, like I said, in a different part of memory, and that's all you really have to know about it. Just know when we're going to be accessing it, it's going to be accessed differently, and we're about to access it pretty shortly. So now what can we do? Well, we could update it every single time we come here. We could say German Shepherd double colon number of dogs created plus plus after every single time, and this will update our dogs created number of dogs created static property. And then what we can do is say echo German Shepherd number of dogs created to see how many instances there were that were created. And we can say number of instances created, and we'll go ahead and append that. We'll go to the browser, open up the static keyword. It's the number of instances created 6. So let's see if that really is the case. Let's count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that is correct. So as you can see, even though we instantiated this 0 that was initialized, it doesn't go back to 0 at every single time you instantiate a new German Shepherd. It stays 0, and then as you're updating it, it actually updates it accordingly. So now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Like I said, this seems a little tedious, so we don't want to do this manually every single time. We want to automate this process somehow. So what we can do is we can approach this one of two ways. We could just do this inside here. like German Shepherd, number of dogs created, ++. That'll work. Or we can create a method that in case we wanted to use it outside of the class, we can. And I think for just demonstration purposes, we are going to. So we'll create a public static function, for example, update number of dogs created. And then we're going to be just updating this number of dogs created. Because it's within the same class, we could just use the self keyword followed by number of dogs created followed by ++. Well, now we're just saying, hey, you know, this number of dogs created static property is inside this class, so use the self keyword. As you can see, we're actually using the $sign afterwards. This is a little bit different than when we were using this. We stripped that $sign from the property name, but in here we actually keep it, and then we increment it with the ++. So now what we can do is inside of our constructor, because the constructor gets called at every single instantiation, we could say self update number of dogs created, just call that method. So now if we go over here, we create the first one. So it calls our constructor. Inside our constructor, it sets all these properties, as well as calls the update number of dogs created static method. That static method calls number of dogs created and increments it by 1. If we go back, that's going to be done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Just so you can see the results are different. I'm going to go ahead and delete one of them, and we can still call German Shepherd number of dogs created. Let's go to the browser, hit refresh, and we get 5. Is the method accessible outside of the class? Of course it is. I'm just going to put a little break tag, and then I'm going to say update it again, German Shepherd, update number of dogs created. I guess that doesn't return anything, so what we'll do is we'll just call it right here to go ahead and update it. And then inside here, we're going to call the German Shepherd number of dogs created, which is that static property. And we're going to append another little break tag, save it, go over here, update it again. Now it's at 6. So what it did is we instantiated all of these. We called the number of dogs created because every single time the constructor called the update number of dogs created static method. And so it got down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we called the update number of dogs created static method outside of the class using the German Shepherd class name followed by the method name. Once we called it, it did the exact same thing. It called number of dogs created ++, and then once we appended it to update it again and called the number of dogs created static property, it reflected the updated value, which it went up by 1, so we're at 6. And that's really all there is to static keywords. I'll see you guys next time.